I want to welcome everybody to the MDA's virtual trustee forum. This is a kind of a precursor, a look at what the Board of Trustees is going to take up at their meeting on Friday of next week. We're going to have remarks from a variety of people today, myself, and then we're going to hear also from Dr. Todd Christie, our Speaker of the House. We'll also be hearing from trustees Dr. Jerry Cohen and trustee Dr. William Patrick, as well as our Executive Director, Ms. Karen Burgess. So I'm going to start out. My name's Mike Mayhofer, and it's my privilege to serve as your representative this year as MDA President. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the clinical licensure examination, or our discussion regarding clinical licensure examination. At our last in-person board meeting, our Michigan Dental Association Board of Trustees adopted the following resolution. Resolved that the Michigan Dental Association supports the elimination of the single encounter live patient procedure-based clinical dental licensure examination format. So that resolution was passed, and that's now MDA policy. But in addition to that resolution, there was a couple other resolutions brought up by members of the board, and the discussion of those two resolutions has been postponed until this up-and-coming board meeting this Friday. That resolution is as follows. Resolved that the Michigan Dental Association supports clinical licensure examinations that are valid and reliable measurements of a dentist's licensure applicant's clinical skills in dentistry, and be it further resolved that the MDA supports the elimination of clinical dental licensure examinations. So we had a small discussion about these two resolutions at our last board meeting, and it was decided to postpone the discussion of these two resolutions until next Friday's board meeting. So we're going to discuss those next Friday. Some of the members of the board thought it might be good to get input from both of the deans of our two dental schools who will be in attendance at this meeting to see what their take might be, or what the implications might be if those resolutions were to pass on dental education in our state, and just kind of see what their opinions are on that. So that's been postponed until next meeting. So next Friday, we're going to discuss those two resolutions. That's all I got to say about that. Okay. Next up, our Executive Director, Dr. Karen Burgess, is going to talk about the generative discussion that we're going to have at next Friday's meeting, and it has to do with our most recent member value survey. So Karen, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for the promotion to Dr. Mayhofer. I appreciate that. Someday I'll get my honorary dental degree, I think. The MDA, as you all know, is very focused on making sure that our members have a good opinion of the association and that they feel that they're getting a good amount of member value, and that they are promoters or people who would recommend MDA membership to their friends and colleagues. And this is all part of our 2021 to 2025 strategic plan, is wanting to make sure that our net promoter score, which is a measure in large part of how much our members would recommend membership to others, is high, not only for members overall, but looking at some subsegments of membership. For example, are women more inclined to recommend us or less inclined compared to their male colleagues? Who are the lagging markets versus who are the people that are just gigantically in love with us? So we're looking at that with this survey. And the member value survey is structured so that you look at, it starts out by asking each respondent to simply answer the question, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend MDA membership? And the way it is divided is a little broadly. So you have to actually give it a 9 or a 10 to be considered a promoter, a 7 or 8 to be considered kind of passive or middle of the road person. And 6 or below, all the way down to 0, is considered a detractor. And so the way you get your net promoter score is you take the percentage of members who answer 9 or 10 minus the percentage of members who answer 6 or below, and you end up with a score. Well, you can imagine it's perfectly possible if you have more detractors than promoters to get a negative score. And if you had 100% of your members either love you or were passive, you could have a score of 80, 90, even 100 for the net promoter score. So that's what we're looking at. The good news is for our members, the overall number came in at 40. We have in the past done surveys using the same score that is, or a little higher. On the other hand, it's a pretty volatile measure, and the average for associations overall is 21. So whether our score is 40, 48, 49, those are all very positive scores. But as we moved through the survey then, and if you were one of the people who took it, thank you for doing that, we were also wanting to see what that the MBA offers do our members value. And so we had a ton of questions, I believe, almost 40 questions that said, of these various member benefits, please indicate how well you rate them. And that was on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 was poor and 5 was excellent. We also said in the very same question, if you are aware of it but have never used it, you got to pick that number. Or if you were not even aware of the benefit, you could say not aware. Well, that helps us a lot, because you can see, what if we had member benefits that the people who used them adored them, but they weren't well known? Clearly, that's a situation where the MBA would say, we need to promote this more and let more members know about it. On the flip side, what if we had a benefit that people didn't really like and nobody used it? Well, that would be an easy one to say, let's not do this anymore, right? So you can see that the survey is set up so that you are able to evaluate the overall impression of MBA and then evaluate a lot of detailed information about what goes into that perception. So the results of that were a little surprising to me, in that almost all of our member benefits rated fairly well. The highest rating went on a 1 to 5 scale. If you give, if everybody gave it excellent rating, the rating would be a 5. If everybody gave it good, it would be a 4. The top 2 things that we had were the MDA Journal had a 4.2 rating. Continuing education came in at 4. The welcoming atmosphere at my local dental society came in at around a 4. So the lowest scores were just under a 3. So you can see they're very clustered around between 2.9 and 4.2. It's a fairly narrow range. But we also found that there were a tremendous number of benefits that not very many people knew about. Some of them make sense, like SoFi, which is our student loan consolidation program. If you are one of the guys on this call, you are probably not repaying student loans. So you might be aware of SoFi, but be very unlikely that you ever used it. So we have a lot of those kinds of things. The MDA Health Plan rated very well among the people who used it, which I thought was great. So this is all information that the board is going to be talking about, and the goal is to say, how can the goal of the generative discussion is, how can we improve member value? And how can we improve member value, especially among the people who are either uninformed or for some reason are unhappy with something. So that'll make, I think, for a very robust discussion, particularly since we did have 3 open-ended questions on the survey. One was, what would the MDA have to do in order for you to give it a higher rating, right? To become a promoter, what would you need to see? Then the second open-ended question was, what does the MDA do really well? And those are always fun to read because 9 times out of 10, they're actually complimenting you. Although there was one member who said, spend my money, was what does the MDA do really well? And then the third question was, do you have any additional comments? And this is where people tend to put in just their random thoughts, like, we should do this, or have you thought about that? They will also compliment specific people or say the board is doing a really great job. So that can be a fun area to read as well. So when you have a lot of open-ended answers, that makes for a very rich conversation above the board for the board, because they're going to see all this boring number stuff, and then they're going to see what people said, and they'll have the opportunity to say, what should we do next to enhance member value for members overall and within specific subgroups. So we typically take an hour for this, and I would imagine that this time we will see a pretty good discussion. So just to give you some random additional pieces of info, you would be interested to know that our Net Promoter Score overall this time was 40, but women significantly higher score than men. Very, very interesting. Older dentists, significantly higher Net Promoter Score compared to younger members. So then a key question for the board is it that they haven't experienced as much? Is it that they don't like things as much? Or is it that they're not receiving what they would really like to receive? So this will give the board an opportunity to think about questions like that. So that's obviously I could rattle on all night, which would be very boring. So I will stop here and just let you know that the outcome of the generative discussion, I think, will be seen in what we do going forward, and of course also documented in our minutes. Can I answer this question, Mike? Sue Karen says, will the survey be available for non-trustees to see? I anticipate that I will write about the survey, Sue, in our report to, pardon me, I'll write about the survey in the February journal. You know, I do a headquarters report 4 or 5 times a year. Next time I'm going to do that, it will be in February, and at that point, I think will be the best time to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Burgess, CAE. Next, we're going to hear from one of our at-large trustees, Dr. Jerry Cohen. He's going to discuss the ADA policy on Medicare expansion, which the board will be discussing, as well as the 2022 MDA award nominations. So, Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. The MDA awards dentists in our state these following awards, and of course, we will be voting on this in our next board meeting, which will be Friday, December 10th. The #1 award the highest award from the MDA is the John G. Nolan Meritorious Award. We have some very good nominees for that. The Emmett C. Bolden Award, Public Service Award, Public Relation Award, the Matt Uday New Dentist Leadership Award for any of our up-and-coming leaders with less than 10 years of experience, and we have some really good candidates there as well. Then there are the 2 dental faculty awards, one for UDM as well as one for the University of Michigan. And then there's the Allied Dental Professional Educator Award as well. So those are the awards that will be voted on. The candidates will be voted on at our next board meeting. The other topic that I want to just briefly touch on is where we stand, and the MDA board will discuss this next week at our meeting, discussing what the ADA position is on Medicaid expansion that was proposed by our government in one of these bills. And just a spoiler alert, the ADA is against this, is against us endorsing this, and we have our lobbyists in Washington working on this. But I think what just to briefly touch on this is the government as part of this huge multi-trillion-dollar bill, wanted to expand healthcare and expand Medicare and have dentistry included in this bill. The ADA said that it's inappropriate for us to be supporting this because it's not means tested. In other words, anybody over a certain age, and whatever age, there was talk about whether the age will be 65 or whether they will lower the age to 60. Anyway, there was no means testing in this, so everybody would be eligible for it, even if you don't really need this benefit. And the price tag would be outrageous, and therefore they will have to cut the price, obviously, and that would impact dentistry. I personally believe it would have a huge effect on dentistry as we know it, as we practiced it for years. So the ADA is against it. The MDA board will discuss whether we want to follow along with the ADA and go along with this position that the ADA is taking. And so, the ADA is voted against it or is against it. Just as a footnote, I think that this has already been removed from the proposed bill. This piece, the dental piece, that's going to be an expansion of Medicare. So anyway, we will have our position on this. We will discuss it and vote on it next week at our board meeting.
Great. Thank you, Jerry, for speaking to that. Next, we're going to have Dr. William Patrick, one of our at-large trustees, talk about the prescriptive authority for dental auxiliaries, one of the things that we'll discuss at the next board meeting, as well as one of their IFG endorsements on temporary service. So, Bill, go ahead.
Good evening. I was assigned two different resolutions to report on this evening. The first one is a revision of a resolution that was passed against House Bill 5374. Back in 2016, there was a resolution or there was a bill that was wanted to be passed by the House of Representatives, and it went to the House committee where it wasn't even discussed. We voted at that time not to support this bill and to oppose the passage of this bill, which was going to allow dental hygienists to write prescriptions. Our Committee on Government and Insurance Affairs thought this resolution was too narrow and we need to revise it. And what we're going to do is include dental auxiliaries in this resolution that opposes the passage of this particular bill for dental auxiliaries and for dental hygienists to write prescriptions. The second of these two resolutions that we're going to pass is a resolution which is brought to the House by the MDA IFG committee, which is under the direction of Dr. Michael Booth. And it is a support of stint temporary services, which is a co-endorsement by the American Dental Association and by the Michigan Dental Association if we decide to pass this resolution. What this resolution will do is you will be able to contact this organization and they will be able to provide temporary services for a position that you need in your office. That's about it.
Great. Well, thank you, Bill. Before we continue, I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, you can type them into the Q&A. We're not using the chat function tonight, so if you have any questions for anybody, you can either direct them to the whole group or to individuals. You can use the Q&A. So continuing on now, we're going to hear our Speaker of the House, Dr. Todd Christie. He's going to address two issues. He's going to talk about the board's upcoming consideration of House Bill 5244, or the COVID Employment Rights Act. And then he's going to talk about the ADA's new strategic promotional incentive for membership. So Todd, go ahead.
Terrific. Thank you, Mike. First, I've got a couple extra things I'm going to make sure I get correct here right now. First, for all those who are on, I want to thank the following districts who have already submitted their names for their alternates and their delegates for the House of Delegates. If you hear your component, you can smile. If you don't, you need to get your email in to let us know who your delegates and alternates are. They are Central, Cloverland, Genesee, Jackson, Kalamazoo Valley, Lakeland, Livingston, Macomb, Muskegon, Oakland, Resort, Sault Ste. Marie, Southwestern, Washtenaw, West Michigan, and the University of Michigan. So thank you to all those folks who got their names in by the December 1st deadline. For those other ones, please get those moving to us, because that's how I need to go through and select the members of the House committees. Second that I have as speaker was to encourage all components for coming up for your meetings in the beginning of the year, to make sure that you invite a board member, any board member, to your meetings, to your board meetings, to have them involved so you can meet them. This is something I brought up at the House of Delegates, as well as in my June talk and report out in the Delegates Digest. I strongly encourage your components to do that. I know many of you have enjoyed the company of having Dr. Mike Mayhofer present and his presidential address at one of your meetings. But don't forget, you could invite Jerry Cohen or Bill Patchik too. I'm sure they'd love to come and talk to you, or even as well, especially in the winter months here, virtually. So that's what I have there to start. The next part I have for you is talking about a very important portion that goes into our membership, which is the Strategic Promotional Incentive, which is the SPI. So the MDA House a number of years ago approved the bylaws language that allows the board to match the ADA Strategic Promotional Incentive. Now, this incentive this year is offered from January to May and is a one-time 50% dues reduction. Now, for 2022, what came from the ADA that we are following is that we will follow, if approved, it will target non-members with recently lapsed memberships between 2019 and 2021 who are women, racially and ethnically diverse dentists, and new dentists 3 to 5 years out of dental school. As we looked at our reports right now, this currently would entail about 860 dentists who will qualify for this offer. So that's one thing. Now, both this resolution and the second one I'm going to talk about are ones that are on our consent calendar. So unless one of our board members decides to extract from our consent calendar, they will be approved. The second that I'll be speaking about is the House Bill 5244, the COVID Employment Rights Act. This bill has been introduced into the House by Representative Andrew Fink of Hillsdale. With this, it would repeal the COVID-19 Employment Rights Act, which has been a legal basis for the protection employees receive from their employers in the event of contracting or being exposed to COVID. The protections include prohibiting an employer from disciplining or discharging an employee for contracting COVID-19 and not reporting to work. With this one, I'll just let you know, from what your Committee on Governmental Affairs and Insurance Affairs, they did not recommend taking a position on this bill, and that's how it stands right now. The reasoning behind that is they don't see this bill, when the original bill that passed to create this Employment Rights Act was very well received, put in through the Republicans and was voted through. They don't see this being repealed right now, as it is an Employment Rights Act. And so they've sought to take no position on this bill. And I would say, in my evaluation, why would you expend political capital when it's not going to pass anyway? But this one does not seem to see that it's going to happen in the House. So we're taking no position at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd, and thank all the panelists. So right now we can take questions. We can take questions in the Q&A. If anybody wants to put questions, I don't see any there right now. We'd be happy to answer any questions. This is your chance to ask the panelists. about what we might be considering at the next board meeting? I suppose you could ask verbally too if you wanted, but or maybe you can't. But we'll wait another couple minutes here and see if anybody. Okay, we've got one in the Q&A from Sue Karen. Where is the temporary service located? Can somebody answer that? So this would be the service that IFG is going to endorse. Anybody have an answer?
Currently, in the state of Michigan, the stint services is located pretty much in the city and in the city of Ann Arbor. That is in Detroit City and the city of Ann Arbor is where they're really fortified for providing a lot of employees. Does that answer your question?
They'd probably go outside of those two cities, though, wouldn't they, Bill?
Oh, they would go outside of those cities, but as stated, they're pretty much located in Detroit and Ann Arbor. If you were looking for somebody in Grand Rapids, you would probably be out of luck because somebody wouldn't want to travel 2 hours to work.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, Dr. Pachak, my memory from the IFG discussion about this was that this is a growing company, and especially for the states that co-endorse, they plan to recruit more people. So for folks in the heavily populated areas, the southeastern area of Michigan, they already have employees here, so they're feeling very comfortable with that, and they do hope to expand with more employees throughout the state.
Additionally, if I can add here, Dr. Mayhofer, they currently have approximately 50 dentists in the city of Detroit and Ann Arbor, Washtenaw area, 70 dental assistants, and 100 hygienists.
Okay. So, Sue, does that answer your follow-up question as to why does the MDA need to endorse temporary services that don't cover most of the state? It sounds to me like I don't think IFG would do that. I think the impression they've been given is that they will cover most of the state. I think that's
eventually.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns that they want to bring up at this time? So what we've discussed tonight is pretty much just a slight preview of a very extensive agenda that your Board of Trustees is going to be covering a week from tomorrow. And we're going to do our due diligence to serve the membership, but there's a very large agenda. But we've covered about 6 or 7 of some of the topics that are going to be covered. And I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A. And so, if that's the case, did you want to say something,
So
Karen?
there is. Sue did say, is there a royalty or a payment to the MDA for endorsed services? And the answer is yes. Usually, it's a modest payment, particularly. So it is a source of non-dues revenue. As you are probably aware, there's an endorsed services committee that looks at potential endorsements. They take it to the IFG board. The IFG board had, within this particular case, and in every case, they had a thorough discussion. And one thing that Dr. Pachak didn't mention, but the number of calls that we are taking at the MDA where people are having challenges recruiting staff, both permanent staff and just temporary staff because somebody is out, is incredible. So the hope is that with this endorsement, the IFG is thinking that we can be of some help, even if it is not a complete solution for all the members. It's at least something that will help. And the endorsement dollars, Bill, do you remember? It was I think a fairly modest amount because we would be simply taking a share of the ADA endorsement funds.
That's right. Thank you. Dr. Paler had typed in that the White House had dropped adding dental and vision benefits to Medicare in the latest infrastructure, but that's absolutely correct, Dr. Paler. But what we're going to be discussing at the board meeting is whether the MDA wants to adopt the lobbying policy that the ADA had in case this ever came up again as a possibility to put the dental provision back in Medicare. We're going to discuss as a board whether the rationale that ADA uses as far as means testing and it not being placed in Part B, we're going to discuss that to see whether our board wants to adopt the same policy that the ADA has adopted in case in the future this could come up as a possibility to be put back into law. Would we lobby the same way as the ADA? So I think that clarifies. But you're absolutely correct. The current bill in front of Congress has dropped both the vision and the dental benefits. So I'm sorry I missed that before. Does anybody else have any other questions or concerns that they want to share with the board? So not seeing any, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the panelists, and I want to thank everyone who participated this evening. And I know our board's going to have a very good and fruitful meeting next Friday. So until we have our next trustee forum, I want to say good night and happy holidays to everyone.